To you, these look just like two any old regular grain bins. But to me, once I put these yellow tags on here from the U.S. government, I will be transferring the ownership of the grain inside these bins to me as a part owner and the government as another part owner on the grain inside of them. And I'm doing this because I, as a 25-year-old beginning farmer, and farming is a very capital-intensive profession, need money to pay for all my inputs for the next year. So today, I'm going to talk to you about the process that I'm going through currently to seal my grain in these two bins to get money to pay for next season's inputs. So by placing this little yellow tag, or what they consider a commodity loan seal on the bin, this will now indicate, whether I'm not around or somebody else tries to take grain out of this bin, it will now indicate that we need to contact the FSA office or the government office that's in charge of distributing money to farmers, that this grain has a loan against it. Similarly, I'm going to put another yellow tag on this bin door, and then we'll start talking about why I'm sealing my grain and what I'm going to need the money for. With those two bins sealed up now, the government now owns part of those bins. But let's start talking about why I'm sealing these up, why I need the loan. Let's get into it. So having farmed in 2024, currently all of my money that I put into the 2024 crop is stored inside our bins here at the bin site, which isn't a problem, but the problem arises in terms of paying for all the inputs such as seed, fertilizer, chemical, rent moving forward to next year, when right now all my money is tied up in grain in a bin. Now you might be thinking the easy solution is, Matthias, you need money, why not just hook up an auger, start hauling grain out, and use that money to pay for your inputs for next year? And that honestly is the easy answer, but the reality is history shows that historically prices are lower in fall and at harvest and during the early winter months when there's still a lot of grain in the countryside. So not wanting to sell my grain at a lower price, that is why I'm taking out this loan and sealing my grain in anticipation of higher prices to come in the summer. Now that we understand why I don't want to sell my grain right now, let's talk about why I need the money. I need the money for inputs like this: seed, corn seed, soybean seed, fertilizer, chemical, all of which are coming due here in the next 30 days because I, as a farmer, can receive the biggest cash discount, so pay the lowest price for my inputs if I'm purchasing them pre-season in this time of the year. So that's why right now I'm trying to get as much inputs purchased for my 400 acres for next year, purchased at the lowest price, albeit I'll be paying some interest. That's why I need the money. Now, to get some money for my farm, I really am left with two options. Option number one, go to a traditional bank, take out an operating loan for my farm. Or option number two, which is to take out a loan against the physical grain that I have sitting in the bin here at the farm. And this is the option that I chose. Because I chose option number two, which was taking out a loan against my grain inside the bins, let's talk about this option first. So when I walk into the FSA office, which is the Farm Service Agency office, full of people to help people like myself, a farmer, learn about programs, loans, things that the government has out to help farmers, first thing they do, hand me a sheet of paper of all the rules and regulations I would have to follow if I was going to seal my grain. And the two big ones that you should be aware of is, number one, before I can sell even a single bushel of grain or haul a single bushel of grain off my farm, I first need to call the FSA office and let them know that I'm moving grain, just because they have part ownership of some of the grain now. And number two is that I need to have a price on every bushel that leaves the farm. I'm not able to just say, oh, I'm not going to sell this grain for 2 or 3 years. That's not allowed, because they need to get paid back, and they need to get paid back their dollars a bushel. And for that to happen, there needs to be a price attached. So those are the two big guidelines that I first learned about. The next question I got asked was, roughly how many dollars am I looking to seal against? How many dollars am I looking to bring into my farm? And currently, I only have one input that I need to write a check out to. So I said, I need roughly $30,000. So then they printed off a map of all the bins here at the farm, and I selected bin number 1 and bin number 2 as the two bins that I was going to be sealing the grain in. Now, each of these two bins that I selected holds roughly 13,000 bushels of grain. And like I said, I wanted to bring in roughly $30,000. So in total, I completely sold all of that grain, or sealed all that grain versus the government. So I have 13,000 bushels out of that bin. And then I have another 3,000 bushels out of this bin that is sealed as well. So between those two bins, I now personally have 16,000 bushels of grain sealed to the government. And the way that the math works is they take that 16,000 bushels of grain times a local ceiling rate, which is a rate that the government can loan against, different by each geography. So in my county for corn, it is $2.08, which means the total amount I got loaned right now is $33,000, roughly $200. And the benefit to me is I can use that $33,000. I get to keep the corn in the bin, still hopefully sell it this summer for a higher price, use that money to pay for some of my inputs now at a lower price. Honestly, it's looking like a win-win for me. The caveat is, now when I start hauling corn to town and say I sell it for $5, that $2.08 that I already had previously loaned from the government, that's gonna get taken out of my check, plus interest, which at the time I signed up to loan my grain was 5.25%. And that 5.25% interest rate brings up a very unique point. I, as a beginning farmer, I could go out to a commercial bank, I could go out to a bank, see if they wanted to give me a loan, but the reality is, I don't own a lot of large, expensive pieces of equipment like a tractor, so I can't show that on my balance sheet to help lower my risk level to the bank and eventually lower my interest. So the reality is I'd be paying probably somewhere between 6 and 8%. And that's why I chose going through the FSA office, is because now I'm able to pay less in interest. Now, banks still totally have their spot in farming, because the grain I'm sealing against, that all has to get sold, and my loan needs to get paid back to the government just this year. But if I were to go out to a commercial lender, take out an operating loan, the reality is I could keep that loan open. I could use it to buy larger pieces of equipment that might be above how much I could seal my grain for. So commercial banks, eventually, that's going to be the way I'm likely going to go. But right now, just the fact of keeping that lower interest rate, not needing that much money that I'm foreseeing, at least with my projections, that's just the way I'm going to go to finance all of my inputs for 2025. Now, I'd be remiss if I didn't tell you I was a little bit, actually a lot bit nervous and stressed out, not just about the loan approval process, but just about the fact of borrowing money. You know, it's the fact of not knowing in farming what type of year I'm going to have next year, what the income might look like, what the prices might look like. And I often think back going through this process when my dad was my age, right? So a bag of seed might have cost, a bag of corn seed, maybe $100. A new tractor, $100,000. Now a new tractor's $400,000. A bag of seed corn's over $400. So it's just the volume of dollars that we're working with here at the farm in the last 40 years, from my dad to my generation, has just skyrocketed. And I think that's what keeps me up the most at night, is just knowing, I'm not borrowing $20,000. I think by all time it's all said and done, once I figure out what all my inputs are going to cost me, I'm guessing somewhere around $100,000. And if you want to see what all my input costs are going to be for 2025, all you got to do is hit that subscribe button down below, because very shortly here, I'm going to be making my input purchasing decisions for the next growing season. So with that, that's all I got for today's video of High Tech Farmer. Thanks so much, everybody, for watching. We'll see ya in the next one.